Welcome everyone to CPAA's special webinar, Helping Others Make End-of-Life Decisions. First, a few housekeeping rules. Please keep yourself muted during the presentation. You may type any questions that you have in the chat during the presentation, and I will keep track of them, and all the questions will be answered at the end. This program is being recorded, and I will send that out in the next few days. There are 4 different documents for download in the chat. I have put them at the top, but then they didn't show up at the top, so they're kind of somewhere in the middle now. But I will also send those out when I send the recording. So you will get a copy of those in your email as well. With that out of the way, I am very pleased to introduce our speaker, Carolyn Harrison. Carolyn received her Bachelor's of Nursing from the University of Missouri. She received her Master's of Nursing from Wichita State University and completed a certificate in clinical healthcare ethics from St. Louis University, Albert Ganigi Center for the Healthcare Ethics. Carolyn has a passion for patient advocacy, educating the public and healthcare professionals about healthcare choices and decisions persons need to make when they have serious illnesses or end-of-life decisions to make with their families. She is currently an independent nurse educator about these issues. Carolyn has had 2 decades of experience teaching about advanced directives and serious illness conversations. She has experience planning 15 years of healthcare ethics conferences through the Kansas Healthcare Ethics, the Kansas Health Ethics Incorporated and Wichita Medical Research Education Foundation. She currently serves on various community boards, including as chair of the Transportable Physician Orders for Patient Preferences with the Medical Society of Sedgwick County, and she is on the board of the Alzheimer's Association's Conference Committee, the Wesley Medical Center Ethics Committee, Wichita State University National Advisory Council, and WSU College of Health Professional Dean's Advisory Council. Carolyn is married to Paul Harrison. They have 3 daughters and 5 grandchildren. So that is a wealth of knowledge, and we are very lucky to have you here, Carolyn, today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Amy, very much. Next time I will shorten that bio, but anyway, it makes me sound old, and I am, but that's okay, because we're going to talk about that today, and I'm going to just try to see if I can share my screen here, and we should be okay. Optimize screen sharing. Okay, Amy, help me up. There we go. All right. And then you will just probably see the 1 slide at a time. Is that okay? Can everybody, and I don't have the participants viewed right now, but I hope everybody can see that and hear me, but let Amy know on the chat area and we'll try to fix it if it's not visible. So she chose the title that is Helping Others Make End-of-Life Decisions. So I really thought about this very seriously. How can you help others make end-of-life decisions? That's a very big task. And I understand that my audience today has a variety of experiences. Some of you are right at the bedside. Some of you are working in long-term care, maybe in administration, or maybe many of us have parents or siblings, or we ourselves are aging. Well, we all are aging, but we might have a family member that needs some of this information. So I feel like you can use it in your practice, and you can use it also with life. And these are the objectives, and they're pretty large, I think, but I'm going to talk about advanced directives first. Then I'm going to describe how they help us and older adults make decisions. I'll give you a couple of case studies, and one specifically is Dan, about a man named Dan. And then I really cannot do this talk without talking about the Serious Illness Conversation Guide, which will help you with advanced directives and also TPOPP, the project that Amy mentioned I'm very involved with at the Medical Society. So I understand you're all part of this committee from Central Plains Area Agency on Aging. And so I thought about this, how really getting older, what do people think about it? So I found some faces that might express how they feel about getting older, maybe happy, maybe excited, maybe, oh, I don't want to be old. And let's not do that. So when we get older, and certainly I'm in that category right now that they're giving COVID shots to people my age. And so I do feel like I'm getting older, but I guess we all are. But as we reach this time in life when we're reaching 65 plus, there's a lot of challenges. So we think about them and we wonder what's life going to be like ahead of us. And, hopefully we can be healthy, but sometimes there are health concerns as we get older that certainly in this pandemic, we think about this, what would happen if I got COVID? Or do I need to go to a nursing home? Or Dad really is getting very confused and I think we need to figure out how to help him. Or I broke my hip and now I'm doing rehab. There's health concerns as we get older. But along with the health concerns, then it might progress to now we have health concerns that have become more serious. Or I did a poll of some friends of mine that I just listed all the things that they told me they're dealing with right now, and including myself to some extent, but cardiac problems, diabetes, you could certainly add to this list or think of these, but higher cholesterol as we get older, then we may have to have medical intervention with some of the diseases or illnesses that come up during our period of life as we are growing older. But CPAP, those who have COPD and maybe high blood pressure. Hospital care might be needed because of an illness or a UTI. I have a friend who just got a pacemaker and she certainly wasn't planning to get one, but suddenly had some heart problems that the pacemaker is actually corrected. And so there's a lot of things too that I think we don't even realize happen to older folks, but they certainly do change their lives, like UTIs or dental care, orthopedic fractures. I have several friends that over the last year during COVID have waited or postponed surgery until the orthopedic surgeon was available and could do the surgery. But what serious illnesses, think about this, and you can put them into the chat. What serious illnesses do you see in your practice? And I may have listed some of those, but maybe the most predominant one that first comes up to you. Also, with these serious health concerns, then we have illnesses that do take us into the hospital, like strokes or emphysema, COPD, congestive heart failure, end-stage renal disease, and COVID-19, certainly. So all of these may become more serious and bring us to our end of life. And more, I don't like to use that term end of life, but we still do. I'm going to use a lot more today about serious illnesses because there is a lot of decisions. There are a lot of decisions that have to be brought about with some of these serious illnesses, like, do I take antibiotics? Is that going to make a difference? Or will it prolong Dad's life or prolong his dying? I mean, even antibiotics become a question and a decision about whether or not we're going to introduce that as a treatment. Certainly dialysis. My mother had dialysis only a short time. She had a long history of diabetes, and but she did not want the dialysis to last the rest of her life. For some people that may be necessary and that may shorten their life or lengthen it. CPR, and that is one of those things that we will talk about with advanced directives. And all of these can be included in that decision-making. Ventilators, I'd take one for a period of time, perhaps, a patient would say, but maybe not to live on a ventilator. Medically assisted nutrition hydration. And I like this last term, medically assisted, rather than just feeding tubes, because we even introduce medical assistance with IVs or nutrition and hydration of different kinds. But I want to show a short YouTube, and this may or may not work. If it doesn't, you'll have these all listed, but this is one way to use your expertise in your education to talk about how do we start advanced care planning. So I hope you can hear this.
ACP is for everyone.
I could hear it, but I couldn't see it, Carolyn.
You might want to stop your screen share and then restart it. Oh, there it is. Never mind.
I think I did something here. Okay.
No worries, technology.
Okay. That didn't work, did it? Sorry. Share screen.
Decisions on your behalf.
I'll just leave this up, sorry.
It is a
And
gift
listen.
of love to those you care about, especially if you write it down and plan ahead. Document your goals and preferences for your future care and share it. Nominate a spokesperson, someone who knows you well and you trust to speak up for your wishes and values. And remember, this plan isn't set in stone. You can edit it along the way as you grow and change across the course of your life, because doing your ACP is a voluntary, ongoing process. One that gives you the peace of mind that your healthcare professionals can plan your future care, taking your individual preferences into account. Your loved ones can deal with hard decisions, and perhaps most importantly, the ACP can help you optimize the quality of your final years and live with dignity to the very end. So there you have it. It's as easy as ask, chat, and plan. Do your advanced care planning today.
Okay, I'm sorry, I apologize. I did share, but it, oh dear, now I can't stop it. Okay, Amy, help me out here. I want to get rid of this. It'll go on to the next video.
Okay, you will have to actually just turn off YouTube on your actual computer. You've stopped sharing now, which is good. So we can't hear anything.
Okay, I can't hear you, whatever. Let me end everything and we'll start. Sorry. Go away. There we go. Okay. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Sheet.
We still see you and hear you.
Oh, you can't. Great. You can. Oh boy. So I shouldn't use any four-letter words here, but I'm trying to get back to my PowerPoint. So let me see. Okay, here we go. Can you see my PowerPoint now?
Nope. Just see you right now.
All right. Hang on. I want to share the screen. So I think I have to be let back into your Zoom. Sorry.
Nope. You're still here.
Okay, well, let me see what I can do here. Just a moment. Let me go back to this and open. I will have to reconnect. I'm sorry, I think. All right. Then I want to.
Can you see any of us, Carolyn? Maybe.
Yes, I now can see all of you. Yeah, yeah. Now I can see you.
Okay.
So I want to get my PowerPoint back up and hold on. I have it up, but can you see it? Probably not.
Not until you push the share and then click it. And if it doesn't work, I do have a copy, so we can just go with that if it need be.
All right, just let me go back to this one where I am. That's not coming up. I need to probably end the show. And hold on, I'll see if this will work now.
We can be patient.
Okay, hold on. Okay, I don't appear to be on your Zoom though, because I don't see share the screen. I don't know why. All right, now I think I still don't have a share the screen. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
It's okay. Let me
Somebody
start the
says-
PowerPoint. And
Okay.
see if I share the screen, if you can see it. Okay.
Okay, and
Second.
Lona Kelly said she can't hear anything. Oh. Sorry. I can see all of you. Okay, let me proceed while she pulls up the PowerPoint. That slide, okay, here we go. Oh, well, I should not touch anything. Did you pull it up already? Amy, is it here? Can you see the slides?
Are you trying to share it? Because I've just shared it.
It said this will stop other screen sharing. Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes, all good.
All right, good. I won't, but I wanted to point this out. This first one that I tried to show you, I got to watch it if you didn't get to see it. But later, click on this. On YouTube, as you know, you can pull up a lot of videos, but this is just a real short, at least 3 minutes and a half of acting or asking, chat, and plan your advanced directives. So that's another way you can help others to think about this and what it does help with. Also, on the next item I have here is a video, and I wasn't going to show the rest of these. I was just using them as resources for you. But many of you have heard about the Frontline PBS film that was done, probably 6 years ago, called Being Mortal, and there's a 5-minute story there about Clyde Earl, and it's very poignant because he is dying, but his wife hasn't really gotten to the point where she was comfortable talking about it, but there is a physician that comes in to talk to them. It's a real story, real true story, and I thought it was very well done. The next YouTube is how to have a DNR discussion, and I think that we all have to practice that sometimes, but and then the other item is how doctors tell patients they're dying. And these are all excellent YouTube videos about advanced care planning and talking about end of life. Some of you may be familiar, and this is historical, but these people that I have pictures of here, Karen Ann Quinlan, Nancy Cruzan's, actually her cemetery stone is the middle picture, and the person on the right is Terry Schiavo. If you Google any of these names, you will find out information about them that tells you that they really had an important step in our lives to remind us to do advanced directives and make our wishes known. The most recent one, Terry Schiavo, there was a book called The Long Goodbye, The Deaths of Nancy Cruzan, and also they talked in here then also about Terry Schiavo. And all of these women had, for various reasons, were in persistent vegetative state. And that means that they could be breathing on their own, but not feeding themselves or in any way be able to care for themselves. So because of certainly Karen Ann Quinlan, her case at a very young age, it came about in 1992, we had the Patient Determination Act, and also that advanced directives would be available to anyone and was a federal mandate in hospitals across the US. So these three people, and you'll notice on Nancy Cruzan's grave, it has departed January 11th and at peace December 26th. So she lived in a vegetative state for approximately 7 years, and there was a lot of legal ramifications about her case that went all the way to the Supreme Court. And so there were many discussions about Nancy Cruzan's life and who gets to decide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And how do we know what the resident or patient wants if they didn't write it down or never talked to anybody about it, like Nancy Cruzan or any of the individuals that I just spoke about? So advanced care planning can help. And I'll give you a case study, and this may be very familiar to some of you, but this is a case study that is written on the Center for Practical Bioethics website. They have a number of case studies on ethical issues, and also on advanced directives. But this is one that they presented, and I think we could put other patients' names in here. But Grace is a retired teacher who's suffering from Alzheimer's, dementia, and she lives in a nursing home. She's not been feeling well lately, sorry, my spelling, but her brother gives consent for Grace to be transferred to a hospital to discover what's going on. But admitting to the hospital, they're trying to figure out what's going on. They do a lot of tests, and he said, "Why are we doing this? It's hurting her." So sometimes prior to that admission to the hospital, we really have to talk about what would the patient want, especially if they are in end stages of Alzheimer, or if it's mom who's had a severe stroke, what next? What could happen with some of these illnesses, and who gets to decide? So that's where advanced care planning comes into play. Advanced care planning includes the advanced directives. It just is an ongoing process. It isn't done just one time. We have to discuss values and goals of care with patients and somehow document them, put them in the charts. We noticed that one of the things initially working with advanced directives at Kansas Health Ethics is that people were having a very hard time finding their advanced directives if they did them, and also that if they had them once they got to the hospital, did anybody have a record? So advanced care planning includes all of that. Who keeps the records, and does your physician have a copy? And also, it can determine more specific treatment directives. Like in working with Kansas Health Ethics, had a lot of patients that came to me, I had them write down specifically a situation that they could think of and that might help their family decide in that situation. But as we all know, there's so many ways that we might be facing end-of-life issues, whether it's a heart attack or it's cancer or it's a brain tumor that we will die from. So the important thing is to appoint someone to speak for you when you could not speak for yourself, and that person would agree with your values and goals. And I have used this many times over the years, but my mother was a very good mother, and certainly when she came about with some of her illnesses at the end of her life, she had to have children decide for her. But she had 8 children, so she didn't choose 8 of us. She only chose a couple of them, the children, especially to decide for her, because she felt that she would get to that point where she could not speak for herself if she had a stroke or was hospitalized with comorbidity. So I think that was so important, but she got the family together to talk about it. So that's how we can help others too. And this is kind of the plan I would give you. How can you help others do advanced directives? So first of all, and I can't see your faces now, but you could raise your hand and say, have you had your advanced care planning done, your own advanced directives? And when I was first hired at Kansas Health Ethics 20 plus years ago, I did not have my own advanced directives. And I thought, if I'm talking to people about these, I better do them myself. And I started to read a lot about advanced directives and talk to others. One book I specifically liked at the time, Talking About Death Won't Kill You. But there are so many books in Amazon and on the library shelves. It's called, one I've used a lot too, it's Okay to Die, because we really do have to make a lot of decisions sometimes that help us to have dignity at the end of our lives. I think when I've asked elders, what would you see as a good death? Not that we think of death sometimes as good, but what would be a death that you think would honor your wishes and give you dignity? And then I think we can think, this is how the conversation should help sometimes the other family members to make decisions for our patients or residents or clients. But myself, I started to get more familiar with the DPOA for healthcare, the living will, and the DNR. Some of you on this call use these documents every day. You're well versed on these. But if you haven't done your own, then get familiar with them if you're especially advising other people about them. The DPOA for healthcare, that's why I handed it as a handout today. Of course, you might even find it certainly in your own facility where you work, or the living will and DNR, but those are the 3 advanced directives. And who can have those? Anybody 18 years and older can fill them out. At the time when I was even beginning to fill out my own advanced directives, it was time to give those advanced directives to my children because they were 18 and older. And now I reminded them over the years, be sure you know where it is, because now that they are married, they need somebody else to help make those decisions, and that they should tell them what's going on and what wishes and goals they have. So in a nutshell, the durable power of attorney for healthcare designates someone to speak for you. And I hope that you have some questions about these documents, but I am a volunteer with Wichita Medical Research, and those are all downloadable documents. And the durable power of attorney for healthcare, I think, is the most important, because if you've designated someone to speak for you, they could speak for you in the situation of terminal illness, which is what the living will applies to. Words from the living will designate this. It says at the very top, Kansas Natural Death Act. So how would we identify a living will? It really is that someone would want to die naturally if they had, as it says in the second paragraph on the living will, if I should have an incurable injury, disease, or illness, certified to be a terminal condition by 2 physicians. So when I talk about the living will with individuals, I highlight some of these words that really helps them understand what they are signing. So you could help others by doing that too. What words really come out to you? I think it's another important statement in the living will that it says, in the absence of my ability to give directions regarding the use of life-sustaining procedures, it is my intention that this declaration shall be honored. In other words, that durable power of attorney cannot revise any of these documents, but also not incur any life-sustaining procedures for that person. The final expression of my legal right to refuse medical or surgical treatment is in the living will. And the DNR, of course, is just about whether or not you would want your, if your heart stopped, if your breathing stopped, would you want efforts made to restart your heart or breathing? When I talk about DNR, and this is how you can help others too, I think, I explain first what CPR is. What is cardiopulmonary resuscitation? And I talk about the physical way we health professionals would do a resuscitation. They've seen that perhaps on TV, and it looks effective about 90% of the time on TV, but that's not always true when we do resuscitation on someone who has comorbidities, or we find them down and we don't know how long they've been, they've had unconsciousness. So DNR is very important to describe first, I think, what CPR is. But I hope you ask some questions about these. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time defining each of these, because I assume that most of you have worked with these, but certainly ask questions. On the Wichita Medical Research website, I've included questions that over the years I've gotten from individuals about advanced directives. And then we always try to get stumped, I think, by new questions. So I add new questions on that website. And these are just a few, but I've had people ask, who should be my agent? So how would you answer that? I would want an agent who would trust me, I trust them. They would follow my values and wishes, not just random. But a lot of people I've found at this day and age don't even have a living relative who they might trust, or maybe they think they shouldn't choose that daughter that's in San Francisco that, she hasn't seen for a few years. But who should be your agent? Maybe it's a friend at church or someone that they really trust. I've had people say, can I choose my doctor? And that would not be acceptable, because that might be a conflict of interest. You could choose someone in the health profession that's taking care of you. So do you need a lawyer to execute your advance directives? And the answer to that is no. You can get those documents anywhere in the United States from a hospital admissions department, or you can get them from the websites, which I'll mention later. But certainly with the Wichita Medical Research, those documents the Kansas documents are available right there. So how is the DPOA for healthcare different from a regular DPOA? The healthcare DPOA is only for healthcare. The regular DPOA is for finances, so we might choose someone different for each of those positions. I have a daughter who's a business person, and she's very good at finances, so she's my DPOA for finances. I have a daughter who's a doctor, so she's my DPOA for healthcare. Or someone in the family that you think is really trustworthy that could be your healthcare decision maker. So these are some of the questions I've added on the website. I hope that will help you, because there are a lot of questions about advanced directives, even though they've been mandated by the federal government since 1992. So we'll still be working on this for many years ahead, I think. But so completing advanced directives is a big step, but really what you have to do is have a talk with these. I've always told people advanced directives are just pieces of paper. Written documents help families know the medical wishes of their family member. I remember a client I had who came into the office one day at Kansas Health Ethics, and she had a napkin and she'd had lunch with a friend and said, I've written down all of my wishes. And I said, and she said, is this legal? And I said, well, not exactly, because it's not notarized. If you put it on a written document, then that's notarized, we can make that legal. And so then she had the medical wishes of her own on paper. Families have been studied that post the death of someone, they say they knew what the relative wanted, and it made decisions much easier. So the talks are very important, and not just one, but the next one and the next one over the years, because sometimes our ideas of what is acceptable for treatment may change. And also what we found out, and this is why I'm going to talk more about TPOPP and what we've done with some things to help individuals at the end of life post or even beyond advanced directives. And as you may know, advanced directives are really statute-based in every state in the United States. That's why they each look different in every state. They've been written by the legislators and approved. But when we get to TPOPP, which you'll see the logo in the bottom of this slide, advanced directives don't translate into medical orders for the present circumstance. Yes, we do ask the patient, and we get the information on the chart that this is the DPOA, but it's not really a medical order, obviously. Even still today, when we poll how many people have advanced directives when they come into the hospital, we're still around 25 to 30%. So we have a lot of work still to do. Also, advanced directives rely on that surrogate decision maker. And sometimes we found that that decision maker we feel as a healthcare professional, making the wrong decisions, or perhaps they misunderstood, or they want support of what the patient in the bed wanted. So advanced directives are also under lock and key in homes or in the bank, in a vault, and they're not always available, but they should be. They should be in the chart of the patient, and they should also bring them when they come to the hospital. So I ask you individually, do you know what your wishes are at end of life? Or do you know what your spouse or your partner or your children's wishes are at the end of life if something happens to them where other people would need to make decisions? In addition to talking about advanced directives, I think we also have to know that there is a trajectory of illness that we can really identify with a lot of serious illnesses. And I think we should be sharing those with patients and help them make a plan for the next suspected change. And we can talk about that with some of those serious illnesses that I mentioned earlier. But a trajectory of illness is that this course of an illness has different stages and phases, and they describe what usually happens, not what always happens. So we might think about that with some of these serious illnesses, that a stroke, sometimes people have other strokes that follow, or that if it's the kind that is treated within the first few hours after a stroke, your diagnosis and certainly the prognosis is better than if you had a severe stroke where you have aphasia and you can't speak and you can't talk, can't swallow, then things are very different. But COPD, congestive heart failure, these have a trajectory of illness that sometimes is continuous, and the patient becomes more and more frail in their old age also. But with some of these diseases, with end-stage renal disease, or we know with a terminal illness, with some cancers, with some ALS, different illnesses, that this is terminal, that we know people do die of these diagnoses. Also with Alzheimer's and dementia, that there comes a time, but Alzheimer's, as you know, and dementia being one of the kinds of or Alzheimer's being one of the kinds of dementia, that Alzheimer's may have a period for a few years with some people and maybe 10 years or more for some others. So, and coronary artery disease. So if you had a patient with any of these or a resident with these serious illnesses, the time to talk about them is not in a crisis, but way before that. If they even begin to get they've begun and they have the diagnosis, then we need to start talking about serious illnesses and be sure that they have at least designated a DPOA for healthcare. They've looked at the living will, talked about the values and goals with that. And then again, DNR if that's necessary. So here's an example of a trajectory of illness with non-cancer. And this could be certainly my mother with her diabetes, her congestive heart failure. She had some decline in her later years, and she really did die at an early age of about 72. But she had diabetes for almost 35 years and carefully took care of herself with diabetes. And I think that's why she lived longer. But she had periodic crises where she was in the hospital because of her blood sugar, or she had an infected toe, or we could just see her decline. So also patients with some of the illnesses I just mentioned, you might see that decline with ALS, or you see it with different types of cancer too. So the serious illness care planning could be with each of these declines, with the arrow that goes down. So there should be more than one conversation about what do they want in the future for their care. This, I think, is very interesting. Physicians are using this surprise question a lot, and it's in the medical literature, but also it was devised by the Ariadne Labs. I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment with Dr. Atul Gawande. And this is a surprise question, and it can help you decide if it is time to ask and start the conversations about serious illness. Would it surprise me if this person were to die in the next year? And if the answer is no, it means it's time for the conversation about serious illness. And one of the persons I can think of right away, right now, that Alex Trebek, he passed away recently, but when he was diagnosed with, I think he had pancreatic cancer, that what would happen in the coming months and years, and would this have surprised his physician if he were to die in the next year when he was diagnosed? Maybe not initially, but as time went on with his decline, would it surprise him? And then we should be having those serious illness conversations. I thought this was very interesting in doing some research, why physicians like this question, but it's not the same as saying someone has a prognosis of a year or less, which is sometimes when they get into hospice care, that they only have the prognosis of a short time. But we should be talking about that long before they go into hospice. Would we be surprised if they died within the next year? No, we should be talking about that when they have these declines, and that trajectory of illness gives us some idea that they will reach this point at some time when we say, no, we would not be surprised, especially for cancer and renal patients, end-stage renal disease. Surprise question does a better job of predicting mortality than current Medicare hospice certification. So that's even more valuable too with defining, I think, certainly when they should be in hospice. But so recognizing these functional trajectories of illness can help plan care. As I mentioned, Atul Gawande, he did create this serious illness conversation guide through Ariadne Labs. You can read more about him and see several YouTube videos, and certainly the entire 1-hour film called Being Mortal. Atul Gawande wrote a book about some of his patients, and it's on a PBS Frontline. Excellent video done with real physicians, real patients, and his initial attempt in writing the book and then also using this PBS Frontline video was that he felt physicians weren't doing a very good job talking to patients and giving bad news, and we needed to get a lot better about it. So the Being Mortal, if you haven't seen it, the PBS Frontline is excellent. It really gives you some examples of how to use the serious illness conversation guide. These conversations help to know better about the patient's values. I thought it was helpful for me because sometimes I don't know what questions to ask. I have a dear friend whose husband just died a few weeks ago, and I use the serious illness conversations to ask her questions. because I really felt like she needed to talk about his prognosis, his diagnosis, that, you know, it was a terminal illness. So how did everybody help to plan for care? And there were some snafus in this story because things just didn't get done. And some things got done that to her husband that she did not feel was of benefit to him. So anyway, I think these serious illness conversations really do help us direct care. It helps us identify the patient's goals and wishes, and also then to have some continuity. If these conversations lead us to put things in the chart, write in the chart, do a TPOPP form, which I'll go into more detail in a moment, but they really do honor the patient's wishes for future care. There's real value, I think, in the serious illness conversation, and that we have documentation, because oftentimes I would, being a nurse on a shift, I'd write something in the chart, but finding in the chart later, 2 months later, or even weeks later, would be difficult to find. So the TPOPP form is really a very good documentation. So we need to have these earlier, more and better conversations to help seniors deal with their illness, or anyone with a serious illness in their lifetime. So, especially because as we all get older, there's perhaps less cognition and some mental health challenges. I remember my mother was very witty to the end, and she could speak well, but sometimes it was almost too much information for her. So she needed people to help make those decisions. So a serious illness guide helps communication, and family members of older adults with serious illnesses feel better because they are confident they know the wishes of their loved one and that they've written in a document. So how do we have these, or how do we do these conversations? They're pretty difficult for many healthcare professionals. I certainly have gotten more comfortable with it, but Ariadne Labs on their website has a really good article. It says, improving how doctors have difficult conversations about goals of care. And it's actually written by a Boston oncologist, because she said that she had been talking to people for over 25 years, but she needed to get better at it. So I remember that sometimes physicians, intensivists, would go into ICUs and then really not feel comfortable with talking about future healthcare wishes for the patient, but they might be in contrast to what the staff felt was going to happen. So write the patient's wishes down. And in the serious illness conversation, I'll point this out in a moment too, but we really have to talk about what the patient wanted, but then also what are the goals of the healthcare professionals. If you start these conversations with someone, you can say, you can blame it on me. Encourage them to talk about their wishes and their advanced directives. You can say, Carolyn wanted you to talk about these. She wants me to do my advanced directives. You know, you can say someone else encouraged me to do this, or I talked to all of my patients about this. Sometimes people think, oh, you're asking me because I'm going to die. And we can say, I talked to all of my patients about this. So that's another way. Share the story of a friend or colleague, or a situation with a patient that you saw and did not have a very good death, or that things could have been better. So let's talk about Dan, and I'll give you some examples with his case. And he is a 65-year-old man with a history of cardiovascular disease, and he's come to the hospital with a stroke. He has paralysis on his left side. He's aspirated food several times, even using different consistency, and there's uncertainty about his decisional capacity. He is aphasic, and so his responses might be yes or no with head movement, but also are inconsistent sometimes because of fatigue or just cognition. But who gets to decide for Dan? I think that's the hard question sometimes. If his prognosis for recovery is not certain and also not safe for his swallowing and speech, then we have to keep finding out what more, is going on here. The neurologist may feel that Dan has lost capacity, but also that he may need a feeding tube at this point. And Dan did not have any advanced directives. His wife said they never discussed this. Well, we didn't think this would ever happen. That's the what ifs. We have to talk to our family about what if you had a severe stroke, like Uncle Dan, or somebody that you know that had a stroke? What did they decide? What did you think about that? But in this case, Dan's sons are opposed to placing a feeding tube. They may have had, I think our choices are made by experience too, and they may have had some experience with a relative or a friend. But Dan's wife is not sure, and she requests the tube be placed. So does she have the best position to make these decisions? Oftentimes these come to ethics committees because there is discord in the family, or maybe no one can come to a decision. But this sounds familiar perhaps to you. So what do we do now? Do we try a feeding tube for a period of time, like 2 weeks or a month? And also see if Dan recovers some capacity. Or should we send this to the ethics consult and then help the family decide? But ultimately, Dan should have done an advance directive, maybe talked about what ifs, and if he had had a situation where he had had a stroke, or if he had had heart disease, what are some of the things we should have talked about with that? What if you have a heart attack? So these are the things that, with a history of the patient, we need to be having some of these discussions ahead of time, not in a crisis when now Dan can't speak anymore. So how could it be different if he'd had an advance directive? This is where I really feel every person on the team that's taking care of Dan, maybe the family practitioner months ago, or someone that he disclosed this information to in the family. Maybe the son should have said, hey, Dad, you know, if this comes to a situation in the hospital, who do you want to decide? So we should incorporate advanced directives in our discussions with family. I had a woman who said at Thanksgiving a number of years ago, nobody was going to get to eat until they had their advanced directives done, and they talked to her. So, you know, I don't know how we can make it happen. I just kept reminding my children at some point, I might need to make the decisions, and I needed to know what their feelings and thoughts were. So if Dan had had advanced directives, the mother had been, or I'm sorry, his wife had been chosen a DPOA for healthcare. Maybe they'd had some conversation, and we would have trusted that then Dan chose her to make the decisions. But maybe he had chosen her and then only one of the sons. And sometimes this happens too, that we choose the DPOA for a certain reason because we trust that they would follow our wishes. So the first steps are create an advance directive. And certainly too, that little video said, ask, you know, do you have one? Do you know what it is? Show them a little video or YouTube. Then determine the goals of care in the case of a what if. If you had a sudden acute illness, I think in this day and age, we could say, what if you had COVID? What would you want to do? What if you couldn't breathe on your own? Would you want a ventilator? So we can really look at some of those what ifs. Also, then that's not just the last thing you do. It might need an update as there are other illnesses that occur. And certainly identifying the healthcare agents. Maybe at some point you feel that's not the right agent and you want to change your DPOA for healthcare. Or we need to review our goals and values that, you know, I used to say, well, I wouldn't want to go to a nursing home, but that might be okay, you know, in certain situations. Or we certainly need to write things down so that those documents really help, I think, in situations with families where there's discord. So introduce the advanced directives, reflect on personal experiences. I've just kind of made these talking points too, that you go down the list and talk to people who are you're considering as your agent, appoint the persons then that you have asked, act by sharing your decisions about healthcare, and review the preferences regularly. I personally have had my advanced directives done years ago, but I couldn't find the paperwork a few months ago. And so I went and actually revised them again. And so we need to keep in mind, where are they? Because maybe my husband didn't know where they were either. So I had them in a drawer, but certainly lost it in the paperwork. So the paper chase was ended, and we did new advanced directives. So now I feel better about that. But again, this was what I was talking about. We need to have another perhaps discussion about serious illness if there are illnesses that the trajectory shows us they're getting sicker, or there's this one with a lingering expected death like frailty, like my 90-plus-year-old grandmother that with diabetes too, she became more ill, but certainly at 93, when she died, she was very frail, and we didn't want to do CPR on her because she was so frail that maybe then her sternum would be broken, and we talked about that, and so she did put in place a DNR. So as people have an expected death, then we need to talk about that DNR. So hope my time is going okay here. We're almost, so advanced directives are not enough, I've mentioned that. But we have to help people who would then answer that, or you'd say, no, I wouldn't be surprised. So we need to create their advanced directives, identify goals of care, and put them in a TPOPP order. And so I'm going to mention to you that this is really a project that I've been working on with the Medical Society and a team of people. We came about doing this because we were finding that patients were coming in the ER with no advanced directives, or advanced directives, but not specific enough to what kind of care should be done. So if you Google POLST, this is a physician orders for life-sustaining treatments that in other states, they've been started 25 years plus in the West Coast, and now there's almost 40 of the 50 states doing POLST most, medical orders for life-sustaining treatment. This particular kind of model, TPOPP, was started and coordinated by the Center for Practical Bioethics in Kansas City in 2012. And now there are other cities in Kansas and Missouri that are involved with TPOPP. But you could take this with you if you had a TPOPP form to Idaho, or you could take it with you because it's a physician order. This is a copy of it, and certainly you can see it on your screen here, but the pink sheets are the original. They can be copied into white, but look at the A section, it's CPR. Someone could actually make this their DNR. Most of the time we use a DNR form, but this would also review that. Do you want to be attempted, have attempted resuscitation or not? That's what we need to talk about. Also medical interventions. And so these are delineated as full treatment, selected interventions, and you don't see that on an advanced care planning DPOA form. These are very specific. And my favorite part of it is that we can still use other people to help make the decisions when the patient no longer can decide for themselves. So on the D section, it's discussed with the patient, healthcare giver, agent DPOA, parent of the minor, a legal guardian. We can write down who did we talk to. So you can go to this form in somebody's chart and find out how this conversation occurred, and then it's documented. And it travels at all levels, from home perhaps to long-term care, via transport in EMS to the hospital, and then it can be revised again if their hospital situation changes. For example, if they were received at the hospital and had a severe stroke, now maybe perhaps the family's making the decisions, and we need to actually document who's helping make those decisions. And previously the patient had made the TPOPP form. So it's designed to improve the quality of care people get at the end of life. And we hope this is, I've seen this work well. It's not something that everybody would have. It's for those who have chronic advanced. So those with that congestive diseases that have that trajectory of illness. And then you can put the goals and preferences into a medical order. And it's really based on a talk with the patient and their surrogate. And then it ensures informed medical decision-making is done. So the TPOPP goals, again, it promotes that person's autonomy. It enhances HIPAA-compliant transport down that we talked and it goes in the record, and then we clarify the patient's treatment wishes. And I think it's helped a lot with confusion regarding a person's care. For EMS that serve on our committee for TPOPP, they say when they actually go to the scene, now they ask for the TPOPP form if they have it, and then there's specific care that's outlined. Sometimes they have to say the patient didn't want to go to the hospital, or they want to remain at home for their care. So that's how the TPOPP form can work, and then provide a situation where many or a lot of care is not what the patient wanted. So it's appropriate care that can be facilitated by EMS. So again, it's in the Ariadne Labs. You can go to that website, and that's the guide. And this is what it looks like. It's very interesting how they did this study about serious illness conversation on the form. And if you downloaded it already, you'll notice that some of the words are bolded. And what they found out is that these are the words that the patients remembered that really are poignant to them, stick out when you ask the question. Like, certainly we want to know what the patient's understanding is. What is your understanding about your medical situation right now? But also, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes the professionals have a different understanding of where things are. So we need to share that too. What are your most important goals if your health situation worsens? This is very important, I think, too, right now with the pandemic. What if you have to go to the hospital? What if you have to be on a ventilator for a period of time, or maybe not be removed from it because that's the only way you can breathe? So these bolded words are really helpful, I think. This first question up at the top, what are your biggest fears and worries about the future with your health? This is an excellent question to ask people if they've been newly diagnosed with a serious illness or disease or terminal illness, because oftentimes the patients are not asked that question. But if you became sicker, what would you be willing to go through to have more time? The next question or statement I really like, because I have found myself saying to someone, I'm sorry that you have this going on. And it sounds better if I said, I wish we were not in this situation. And using the term we also, or the pronoun, that sounds that we're supporting them, but I'm worried that time may not be, or the time may be me shorter than I had hoped for you. I'm worried that this may be as strong as you feel, and things are likely to get more difficult. In the Being Mortal video, these phrases are used several times, and so well, you can just see that the patient and the physician have some camaraderie there. They understand each other. How can we help others? You should be prepared to help others so they have their wishes honored. And I can tell you, I had to practice these statements many times from serious illness, and I still use them. I look them over because it's helped me to communicate better with patients. So know the trajectory of illness, find out what this patient has, what's going on, what do you expect? Be prepared to talk about the challenges. And when we train physicians, one of the physicians on our team is using this a lot with, he is helping with patients in simulation lab, with medical students and residents, and he is training them. And he said that the Serious Illness Conversation Guide is so helpful with them. So I'm going to close my discussion here with kind of to give you an example. This is my husband's place where he wants to die. His end of life wishes are that we take him to the river in Colorado where he loves to fish, and pitch a tent, a little bit further down that stream because the fishing's better there. And then he will, we can go and check on him in the spring. Well, right now there's a little more snow in that site than you see in this picture, and sometimes even up to 12 inches. So if he's in a tent by the river, I'm not sure he would survive till the spring. So it kind of gives you an idea of what his end of life wishes are, but that's his conversation with us. How do we document that? Well, what would you want done if you had cancer and it's not treatable? You're not going to live, much longer. These are the conversations that have come about because he's told me he wants to be by the river when he dies. So sometimes we talk around our wishes and then we need to get specific. But I've also put on your slides the Serious Illness Conversation Guide, and then also Wichita Medical Research has a number of brochures which have been written by persons who had worked at Kansas Health Ethics, Kansas Advanced Directives, and Choosing an Agent. There's one on understanding DNR, and then also on life-sustaining treatment. So those brochures are really helpful. And then the website, TPOPP Wichita, it's under revision right now, but it's almost there. We're trying to do some YouTube videos on there, so that is a really good resource. And then the Advanced Directives documents. So I hope that this has been helpful. I've done most of all the talking, so now I want to hear from you. But this is one last slide I put on here because I just found this the other day, and it's effectiveness of a nurse-led intervention about doing advanced care planning for older adults. And the article is from JAMA, which is at least accessible, I know, online. So I would recommend that you read this article because it's really a very good article about how effective it is to do advanced care planning for individuals. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, I hope, and then you'll still be able to see me. All right, there we go. So Amy, thank you again for this invitation. Do you have any questions in the chat box, or would anyone like to have some?
Yes, there are a couple of questions. One was more of a statement of the questions about the HIPAA advisory form. Is that something that they should also urge their clients to get?
Okay, that may be from the slide that I don't know that there's really a HIPAA advisory. What I meant by that is that the TPOPP indicates who you are speaking with, and that you have they are acting in that discussion for that decision making for that patient. So I am protecting myself that that person they have the release from the patient to speak with me, because then I point out on the TPOPP form, they're the DPOA, or they're the guardian, or they're the caretaker of the person at long-term care. So that's what I meant by that the TPOPP form illustrates who you're talking to. Okay, and I can give you an example. If you are a spokesperson for someone, but not the DPOA, you might want to get a HIPAA release form. So that then protects you. So does that help? I didn't mean to confuse you.
Yes. Thanks.
Okay.
Another question was, can you send out your slides? Would you be able to let me send them out so that people can have all the YouTube links and all the links? Would that be okay?
Sure, I'll send you a new one just as we close today, because that one slide has all those YouTube videos. So certainly, and it's public property now, so you can have my my PowerPoint. I hope it was helpful. Don't hesitate to also email me, excuse me. I'd like to know how to revise it and make it more helpful to everyone. So if you have some suggestions, let me know. I'll share my slide. Thanks, Amy.
Do you want, I apologize, do you want everyone to do that, or them to email me and let you know?
Yes, that's fine. They can email you because they don't have my email right now. So.
Okay, and then another question was, on the TPOPP form, do people have to use the original pink, or can they print a copy?
Okay, good question. And I believe Paula asked that question. Is that correct? I find that the TPOPP form from the Center for Practical Bioethics, if you need some in your location, you should really order some from the Center for Practical Bioethics and use the original pink. Okay, and then if it's revised, you'll put the new information on an original pink. The patient should take the original pink. Okay, but I know that we all don't have pink paper, and you can print it off, or the next time they're at the hospital, you want to redo it, and you just have to do it on white paper. Or when I've had patients and they have an original pink one, but they want to take it to their doctor, then we just put it on white paper. But the Center for Practical Bioethics used the pink because that was more identifiable. But I have found that when it goes into the medical records, it's going to appear white when you print it off from there. So that's okay, but I really encourage you to use the pink copy for the original. The Medical Society of Sedgwick County, if you look up their number, they have a ream right now. We purchased that for physicians who need it in their offices, but if you need one and you're with a different facility, you can call the Medical Society and say, oh, I need 10 forms, or this is not a form you're gonna need thousands of copies in your files. You're gonna need a few dozen perhaps, but anyway, to answer that question, yes, please try to use the original pink, but I know that's not always possible. So.
Next question was, do you have resources to address myths about advanced directives and DPOAs to talk to people about?
That's an excellent question too. I will double check. I know at one time we wrote one. I'll have to see if it's on the Wichita Medical Research website, because we wanted to make sure that people had the myths that, you know, the doctor's not going to honor this. That's not true. That's a myth. You know, so let me double check that. And I think also the Center for Practical Bioethics has something like that. And I'll send that back, an answer to you, Amy, later. And then you can pass it on to Mary, or no, whoever answered that asked that question. Kathy, I think. So, but I did it at one time, have it on their website, but the Wichita Medical Research has been changing their website and updating it. So I'll look back. I haven't checked that lady to see if the myths are still on there. So I don't know. I can't answer that. Okay. But I'll get you some. Okay, I see another question. Would you ask?
It's more of a comment. It says, I just had my legal work done and my attorney included a authorization and waiver for the inspection and disclosure of information relating to my physical and mental health waiver for HIPAA, which I did not have with my previous legal paperwork. Is that something you're familiar with?
I am, and that sounds like legalese to me. Authorization and waiver for the inspection and disclosure of information relating. What that is basically is a waiver for HIPAA, or it is a HIPAA statement. So, for example, as a patient, I could go ask my physician, could I have a HIPAA release form? And then all of you have had this question asked. You go to your family doctor and you have to sign that you know about HIPAA, and that who do you want to get the information to? So this is done by attorneys too, but it's free at your doctor's offices. That's where my friend got it when I had to take her to chemotherapy. I was not her DPOA, but I took her to therapy all the time for radiation and chemo, and they would give her all this medical information, and I felt uncomfortable that she, you know, the physician should be able to talk to me, but I needed validation. So we just got a form from him and she signed it. So that's the terminology that the attorney's using. So, okay.
Thank you. One of our staff here at CPAAA want to know if you have any pamphlets or handouts that we can have in our office at CPAAA.
Yes, you can. I can bring you some, or if you go to the wichitamedicalresearch.org, and any of you who work in an office that treats patients or if long-term care, that sort of thing, you can go to wichitamedicalresearch.org and go to Kansas Advanced Directives. And then look, there's some narration about the form, but then it'll be in blue and you click on durable power of attorney, or that's for the documents, and then also the handouts. But I can bring you some to your office if you would like. I've got some on the life-sustaining treatments. I have some on choosing an agent, so it's specific on how do you do that. And Kansas Advanced Directives. And then I also have another one on understanding DNR. So I'll bring you all I have, and then if anybody else needs them, you just get them from the website. Okay, will that help you?
Yes, that will help us. Thank you. Our next question is, does the DPOA terminate when the person dies? What documents need to be in place for after-death decisions?
Oh, good question. That's another whole lecture, Amy. But what decisions need to be in place after death? If you have a DPOA for healthcare in front of you, and I'm assuming, Greta, you're asking about the DPOA for healthcare. Yes, the DPOA terminates when, if you look at the authority granted on this legal document, it says authority granted over here. Number 5, the last one is making decisions about organ and tissue donation, autopsy, and the disposition of my body. So that is the last decision that they can make. Oftentimes in the hospital, when I volunteered for hospice too, they would say, now, what did the person want in terms of organ donation? And then also, what funeral home do you want to use? And included in that was, did they want a disposition of the body did they want to be cremated or did they want to be buried? And autopsy isn't done unless it is a homicide or the patient was found down without any understanding of, any illness, and they have a question about what happened. So then, yes, the DPOA for healthcare ends there, and after the death, then it's decisions of like, what are we going to do in terms of who gets the couch, who get, the will and testament are those forms that need to be done for after the death, or what bank accounts did mom have and that sort of thing. So those are definitely, you would go to an attorney for those. And a DPOA form would be very important to assign somebody for finances for any individual too. So somebody said, okay, good. What is the website? And that is wichitamedicalresearch.org. Right. Amy, you put in the right answer.
Okay, I think that that is all of the questions. I don't see anything else. If you do, just slide one in while I'm talking. Thank you all for coming. Thank you very much, Carolyn, for a very informative presentation. I will send out the recording. I will send out her a PDF copy of her slides that will have the links and everything that she talked about in it. And I will send out the files as well in the next few business days. So thank you again very much, Carolyn, and thank you all for coming. I hope everyone has a fabulous afternoon.
Yeah, Amy, could I just give a little promotion, which I've actually done for Wichita Medical Research, but if you have any questions at any time, you can call their number, and it's on the documents themselves. You can find that number on, and they have this brochure that is, you open it up and then inside is the durable power of attorney for healthcare and the living will. But their phone number is it's this area code 686-7172. And why I bring that up and give you the phone number is that Teresa Carter, if she's very good at answering questions about the advanced directives, you could send a client or resident to that number too, or if you had a question, and if she can't answer it, she always calls me and I email the person or call them. So, you can always ask questions, and I'll follow up with Amy about the myths. And one more thing, March 10th, there is an ethics conference that is supported by Wichita Medical Research. And that entire focus of that conference will be about actually COVID. I know we're getting a little tired about hearing about it, but it also is, I'm going to be giving a talk about advanced directives during COVID, or the influence certainly of the pandemic. And we have some excellent speakers lined up. So I would certainly encourage you to check into that conference too on that website. So, and then another question just popped up.
Yes, she said, after my sister's death, we had questions of her therapist, HHS.gov, and the therapist stated there is a 50-year protection period.
Okay, I'm not sure I understand 50-year protection period for.
Stacia, if you want to unmute yourself and clarify, or you can chat it.
Yeah, so we were trying to find out, this was a tragic death, and so we were trying to find out more information on what actually happened to her, because she had reached out to her therapist that same day that we found her in her car. And so I'm wondering if what you know about that kind of thing. Is that something that of course now we don't go back and, do anything about it, but at the time, would there have been something we could have done to find that information out?
So Stacia, are you asking in terms of finding out about the reason for her death?
Yes.
And this protection period is not protecting, or it's protecting her or protecting the coroner? Is that what you understand?
That's what I was thinking, but the therapist, I think, was protecting herself because she had called her that day.
I see. I'm not familiar with the 50-year protection period, and Stacia, I can tell you, I have a personal experience with our own daughter about this, that
Yeah.
she ended her life, and we tried to get the notes that she wrote from the police and the coroner. This happened in Texas. And we did everything to try to get the material, you know, whatever she wrote, we will never know, I guess, because they would not share it with us. And
Right. Okay.
so I can't help you on that, but I certainly think something needs to be done. I've had other people call me about this, that families are not being told what, especially when you find them, you know, they passed away, what actually the person maybe did or what actually caused their death specifically. But the psychotherapy, yes, the records are protected, I think, because I've not been able to find out anything, because that was their patient confidentiality.
Okay. So does that rules apply to the pink form as well?
You mean the
HIPAA
TPOPP?
privacy rule.
Oh, the HIPAA privacy rule. I'm not versed enough on HIPAA. I don't think so. I wouldn't. I don't know. I can't answer that. I would ask an attorney, Stacia. So good question, but certainly makes you feel uncomfortable when they won't tell you, or that you know, the information should be the family's, but it doesn't. It happens that we just couldn't get ours either. So I'm sorry for your loss too.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, Carolyn? Any other words of wisdom for talking to people about this issue?
No, that's probably all I have for today. I really appreciate your invitation. I don't do this as often as I used to, but I still love to do it, and I'm doing it about every few weeks now. And as my husband says, we won't be done when I die, so we'll just keep going. And if anybody would like to volunteer for the Wichita Medical Research and do more education about advanced directives, we would love that. And if anybody would like to serve on the TPOPP steering committee, I'm happy to have more people on that committee too who have a passion for this. So thank you again.
Thank you. Everyone have a wonderful afternoon. I will keep it open for about just a couple more minutes so that if you need the chat, you can go to the chat, pick those 3 little ellipses, and you can save the chat if you want. That way you have everything, but I will send everything out as soon as possible. Thank you.